Do you remember the last time that you learned something life-changing from something so simple it seemed silly? This whole video is inspired by me watching my daughter play on a new playset that we got her. Who knew that climbing a rope ladder would remind me of one of the critical elements of ambition that I constantly find myself forgetting? Today, I'm going to share with you the 5 most important lessons that I've been reminded of when it comes to personal development just from watching my daughter play. I'm Chris with the Growth Guarantee, and today we're going to go on a journey, not through a textbook or a motivational speech or an actual piece of personal development literature, but from my own experience and the lessons that I am constantly reminded of when I'm watching my daughter play. It's been a fascinating adventure being a dad. This isn't me telling people that true value only comes when you have a child, but just in the process of being a dad, I'm reminded so often of how this can tie back into the concept of personal development, because I'm always looking for these examples everywhere. But there's been some very fun examples that I want to share with you guys. Parenthood has a sneaky way of reminding you of the things that you really need to know. And while I thought I was just supervising my daughter playing on her playset, turns out she was teaching me about ambition and gratitude and determination and resilience. These lessons aren't just for parents. This is for people who are just willing to grow, people who are willing to shift their priorities. This is for people who just want to live a more fulfilling life. I'm going to be going over these 5 different concepts and then ways that we can apply these concepts to our everyday life. By the end of this video, I'm hoping that you guys are going to have a fresh perspective and plenty of things to take home with you when it comes down to your own personal development journey. The first lesson came from when I was watching my daughter climb this rope ladder. There were the wooden rungs, and they were held by these rope ends, and she was trying to climb it, but she would get high enough as long as she could reach the rung right in front of her, and then she'd get her feet on and go up a little bit, and the next one would be kind of right there. But there was a part where there was a much bigger gap, and in order to actually continue climbing, she was going to have to reach up high to grab the next one and pull herself up, and she really struggled doing that. And I just remember trying to get her, I would grab her arm and be like, oh look, you're gonna reach up here, and now that you're grabbing that, pull yourself up and move on to the next one. But she really struggled with it, and she was very apprehensive. She was, it kind of made her nervous because she was climbing up higher as well, but she really had to reach to get the next one. And just being nervous doing that, it really made me think about the concept of ambition and trying to reach goals in our life. Now, I know that's a big stretch, but hear me out, right? So in order to really get something that we are proud of, we have to reach high. We really do have to reach. And most of us, and this is myself included, but before I really tried to go on a new personal development journey, I was pretty stagnant. I was ambitious. I wanted things, but I wasn't doing things. And my desire was to get to the top of the ladder in this instance, but I was doing no reaching. I was just grabbing the easy things and just kind of climbing very minimally. And to make the kind of change that I wanted in my life, I've read a lot of books on setting goals, and I've read a lot of books on, trying to understand that if you want something great, you have to reach for something great, and you might not get it. And as you're reaching for it, you're also going to get scared. Development and growth in general is scary, and it's uncomfortable. And just watching my daughter climb and reach up there and be hesitant to do it, but eventually grabbing on and pulling herself up and being really happy. She had that smile on her face showing that she's just very proud of what she just did. And I think that's a very strong parallel to the way that we live our own lives and the way that we set goals for ourselves and the way that we approach ambition in general. So remember, whatever goal you want to set, ask yourself if it's a comfortable goal or one that's really pushing you. Most of us are picking goals which are grabbing the easy rungs. And I want you guys to consider and think about trying to grab the highest rung and what you need to do to keep climbing. Lesson number 2, this one's a really fun one, and it comes down to the idea of wisdom. Now, really, this is me saying, hey, don't do that, hey, don't do that, hey, don't do that. And then my daughter does it anyways, and then she gets hurt, or she falls, or sometimes she's successful despite my warnings. But, I'm constantly trying to look after her and take care of her, and when we have a new play set, I'm trying to figure out what her abilities are. And I want her to approach this in a way where she's challenging herself, but being cautious. Now, she just wants to do whatever she wants, right? If she wants to get to the top of the thing, she's not really thinking of what's the safest way to get there. She's thinking of, I want to get to the top of this thing. And so it's kind of up to me as her supervisor at the time to say, yeah, maybe don't do that. Or if you're going to keep climbing this way, maybe grab this one. Good job. Now grab this one. Good job. I don't want to do everything for her. I want her to learn. But at the same time, I want to keep her safe. So that's the balance that I usually try to do. Now, from her perspective, she just wants what she wants. And she's going to do everything no matter what. And she listens to me for the most part. But sometimes if I'm saying, don't do this, she just doesn't get why yet. And this is when we come back to the idea of wisdom, right? Wisdom, I believe, is the combination of knowledge and experience. Knowledge is just something that you learn, right? But you don't really know why it's relevant until the relevance of that knowledge is part of your experience, right? So, in the personal development sphere, you always have people who say oh, I want to go over this information because I already made all the mistakes and I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I made. And I get that. And I think people should listen when people are saying, don't make the same mistakes that I did. But what often tends to happen is they say, okay, but maybe your experience was your experience and I will have a different experience. So I hear what you say, but I'm going to do it anyways. And my daughter does that. And then something happens. She falls down and she gets hurt, right? And I say, oh, look at that. You fell down. And she might be crying and, maybe I'll brush off her knees or whatever, pick some wood chips out of her hair. But at that point, I'm just okay, well, now you know why I said what I was saying. So I'm not going to tell her, don't do it. I'll let her do it again and I'll let her fall. But even though, she's still probably working on understanding the words that I'm saying, language comprehension is okay for a 2.5-year-old, but I really do want her to not just hear what I'm saying, but as long as she's not going to get hurt, she also probably needs to experience why I'm saying that. And I think this is a big thing. I want people to seek out wisdom, and I want people to be efficient with how they achieve their goals or how they try to develop themselves, right? If you want to get physically fit, there's a lot of information out there, and you should probably listen to someone who has a lot more experience than you because there's wisdom there. They probably were on a similar journey, and they ran into the problems that they know that you're going to run into because you're not going to listen to them, right? But when they're saying it, it's coming from a place of not just knowledge, but wisdom. It's the knowledge that ran into the problem, and then from experience, learned a lesson that allowed them to change their behavior. So this is kind of what I'm, the lesson that I'm constantly reminded of is we're given great advice all the time, and a lot of times we don't listen to it, but that's okay. I don't recommend it. I don't think that should be your strategy, but just understand that's just part of what we're doing. And, I recognize as someone, I would love to give my experience to other people to find some way to help them, right? A lot of the people that I'm talking to are just starting on their personal development journey, and they're just trying to figure out where do I start? What am I starting with? And they're going to hear a lot of advice, but until they really run into the problems, they might not always understand why that advice is relevant in the first place. So, take after my daughter. Most of the time when someone's saying, be careful, listen to me, it might be a good idea to do that. But sometimes if you stray, that failure that you run into, the problem, that pain, might be good for you. Lesson number 3 is more of a reflection that I had. I don't want to get too into the emotional part of being a parent because some people who aren't parents don't care. And when I wasn't a parent, when I heard people talking about the joy of parenthood, I'd be like, shut up. It can't be that great. And then I realized like, wow, either it is that great, or I'm just biologically programmed to believe that it's that great. But there's just so many moments where I can just sit in awe of everything that my daughter's doing and just loving the process of just watching her. I really enjoy watching her and just seeing her little successes and seeing the small bits of growth that she's experiencing. And this is very similar to like when I talk to the camera, and this is very awkward for me, but when I talk to the camera, I'm hoping that I connect with one person, at least. Obviously I would love to connect with way more than that, but there's somebody out there who is not as far along this journey than I am. And I'm gonna say these words, and that's just going to resonate with them, and they're going to understand what I'm saying, and in some way, shape, or form, it's going to allow them to start making their own progress. And I know what I'm doing this for. As awkward as it can be talking to a camera, I know what it's for. And it's like, even though I might not be right there with a person that could be inspired or motivated by anything that I say, I love being a part of people's growth. And I'm just reminded of that with my daughter, because there's so many things that I'm involved in now. Watching her count for the first time, watching her identify animals, watching her identify colors, watching her, count and do her ABCs. There's so many things that she does that at some point she couldn't do. And I'm just in awe of that growth and that development. And, I taught martial arts for years. This is very similar to seeing these big breakthroughs that I have with my students, where all of a sudden they came in, they couldn't do a sit-up. Now they can do a sit-up. And it's like, it seems like a small thing, like, oh, wow, a sit-up, woo! But to me, knowing where they were and knowing that I had some part in that development, it's amazing to watch people grow. And that's something that, I love being a part of. And so even when you are on your personal development journey, there's going to be a point where you are further along than somebody else that's just starting, right? Or you're further along in at least one category that they're trying to improve on, actively being a part of it, right? Maybe I was having my daughter climb up the rock climbing wall, and the first several times I was really nervous. And one time she pretty much did it all by herself, and we clapped, yay, high five, great job. But then I'm back in the garden doing something, right? Tending to my garden. And all of a sudden I see her halfway up there, and I want to run over and be like, oh, just in case. But she's doing it. And then she gets up there, and instead of going down to the slide after climbing up the rock wall, turns around and she looks at me and she smiles, because she knows, based on the last time I was so proud of her, that now this time it was all by herself. I had no part in this. And she's turning and looking at me with this huge smile, and it's such a warming experience. So yeah, I know that it's even stronger because there's that parent bond, and watching my child grow is very different than watching my friends grow, or my students in the martial arts school. But in general, seeing other people become successful is such a amazing experience, and it's something that I want to be part of my entire life. Watching my daughter go up a rock climbing wall by herself for the very first time, it just really reminded me of that, and it's something that I keep remembering. Lesson number 4. This one is it's a lesson in failure. That's what it was, right? And we've touched on this in a couple of the other numbers, but this one I want to just address it head on. It's the importance of failure and practicing and not doing it right, and then continuing to try anyway. She's working on it. She's getting better, but she's not there yet. And sometimes she just doesn't know when she's in a safe position or when she's just about to crash into the ground. So she knows to grab onto it. She knows to put her feet on it. She doesn't necessarily know to do those things together. And there have just been some times where, again, I try to keep her safe. So the first few times, I'll hold her hands on the rope, and then one foot and I'll hold it still, the other foot hold it still. But she's got to get this by herself at some point, right? I can't do that for her forever. So once she kind of understands how it works, then we start getting into just having her do it by herself. And it's not very successful. I'm pretty sure we can do it now, but it took a long time just to get onto that little yellow swinging rope thing. So she would grab on, and then she would put one foot on, and it would just kick off to the side, and she would like lean and then forget to hold on to the rope, and she would just plop right onto the ground. And depending on if she cried or not, then that would kind of, most of the time I would laugh just because it was funny. It looked funny. And most of the time she didn't cry. And if she looked like she was about to cry, I'd just be like, oh, bing bong, fell down. And then she'd be like, bing bong. And she gets it, right? We don't want to keep crying. Let's get up and try it again. So then she would try it again. And again, sometimes failure doesn't teach you fast enough. She would do almost the exact same thing. Grab on, one foot on, slip, boom, right? But then the next time, grab on, one foot on, slip, but she didn't let go of the rope. And now we're learning. This failure is teaching us something, right? She's still not successful getting on the swing, but the failure isn't as bad. And that is a great learning experience. That's a great way for us to approach life. Try it, doesn't work, okay. Let's just try to not fail as bad next time, right? And this is just guiding principles for life. The parallel here is failure, right? And not just understanding the idea of failure, but also determination, right? Because if you're determined, yeah, you're gonna fail, but you're going to fail again and fail again and fail again and fail better and fail better and fail better. And this consistently goes until you're not failing anymore. Like you're just doing it. And we have to approach the concept of failure. And I promise you, there's going to be like 7 or 8 videos at some point of just talking about how important failure is. But this is just another one where this lesson is going to pop up time and time again, because failure is so critically important to growth and success. Because if we're not failing, we're not trying something that's hard enough, right? This goes back to reaching. Like if we can grab everything in front of us to climb, then we're not really going to get anywhere, right? We're going to move at a very, very slow pace. And, it might be difficult to be very, very proud of our achievements, right? If our goal is to climb, we've got to climb. Sometimes when we climb, we fall. When we fall, we've got to be determined enough to want the thing to get back on and be willing to fall again or succeed. Right? You want to be able to accept the failure just as much as you would accept the success. And so this is just one of those times where watching my daughter try to grab onto a rope swing, I got to remind myself of the critical importance of failure. Last one, number 5. This one is like one of those sappy emotional things. My daughter was sitting, so we have like a little ladder thing that we can climb up. We've got the little rock wall on the other side. She got up onto the platform at some point, and most of the time she'll just sit down on the slide and go. And there was this moment where she sat on top of the slide, and I'm just sitting there watching her. She's at the top of the slide, and she like flips over on her belly where her head is still like up and facing me, but she's gonna slide down like backwards on her belly. And like while she's just kind of like laying there before she goes down, she looks over at me and just with her sweet little voice, she says, "Bye-bye, Daddy," and then she goes down the slide. And like I didn't think that just my daughter going down the slide would make me like tear up, but in that moment, it reminded me like one of the very first times that my daughter learned how to walk. She used to take like 6 steps, and I remember like one time she took 12 steps, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. And then there was one time we were like in the hallway by the front door, and she just started walking towards the front door. And like I think I counted to some number and then just stopped counting, because in my head I'm like, she's walking now. Like I don't, there's no number to quantify this anymore. Like that was just walking. And she's walking towards the front door, and it was open, we've got like the screen door. And she just goes and stands, her hands on the door. It was like this movie scene, like the sunlight was shining through the screen door. She was just kind of like standing there. And in my head, I'm just like, one day she's gonna walk out that door like for the last time, like she just learned how to walk, but now I see her standing there, and I can just imagine these futures, like leaving through that door for the first day of school, leaving through the door going to college, leaving through the door for like the last time of when she actually lives there with us. The way that she just looked at me before she went down the slide and said, "Bye-bye, Daddy," brought me back to that time where I could just see my daughter grown up and walking out the door. And it just, I don't want to say like it hurt, like it was a bad thing, but there was a pain associated with that. There's just this, it's like a longing in reverse. Like, I miss her already, even though she's still here, even though like I am looking into the future almost decades, like almost 2 decades. But it, like, I feel that nostalgia almost already. And just having my daughter say bye-bye, daddy, and then she's gone, like I know one day that's going to happen to me. And so how do we tie this back to a personal development video? It comes down to the idea of gratitude and appreciating the moments that you have. I have many other stories where, we have to talk about the impermanence of life. I don't want to get into that right now, but it's so important to appreciate the moments in your life that seem really important, because they're going to go away. And I don't know if this is like an ADHD feature where I can like envision and feel what I'm going to feel right now, even though I don't need to feel it. Like I understand that sad feeling already. And I'm sure it's going to be like multiplied by a huge magnitude when it actually happens. But there was just this pain, this tightness that I felt hearing my daughter say, bye-bye, daddy, right? And like, you can even think, more long term, like deathbed thing, like will she be there when I'm gone and say bye-bye, daddy, like as I'm taking my final breaths? Makes you really, really reflect on the impermanence of life and the impermanence of the moment, and how ethereal these great times really, really are. And I remember that happening as my daughter was growing up. Like, one day she went to sleep with no teeth and that ridiculous gummy smile, and then the next day she woke up with teeth popping through, and it's like that gummy smile is gone forever, right? These moments are gone forever, and we consistently have these throughout our lives. And going back to, like, again, the people who are like, shut up, stop talking about being a parent, this is a lot of what we go through in life. We went through that, high school graduation. We went through that, like, these times are fleeting, but they can often be replaced by better times. And, if they are not replaced by better times, we often have the opportunity to put in the effort to make them the better times. And so this is kind of that last really, like, this was like a punch in the gut thing that made me really, really appreciate what I have when I had it. And that was just something that I wanted to share with you. So the takeaway from that is practicing gratitude, like making sure that you're taking the time to appreciate the things that you have. If you don't appreciate what you have, taking the time to appreciate that you have the opportunity to change what you have, and just being grateful to be on the journey that you're on. And I mean, almost regardless of your circumstance, that option is there. So those were the 5 best lessons that I learned, what's going through my ridiculous head while I'm watching my daughter play on her playset.